From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Are drugs? Well, to err is human, as they say, and presidents, no matter what their fans might tell you, are human as well. There are no god kings in American politics. There are no superheroes with extraordinary powers. I mean, I was noticing this because something really weird happens in news coverage with these things. You'll see these stories that kind of like pop up like a flash in the pan, and then they quickly disappear. And some of those were rumors surrounding former President Trump, for example, and allegations that he was at some point using cocaine. Howard Dean, former presidential candidate, even went on Twitter. And Howard Dean, has a medical background, and he was saying, yeah, look at him sniffing while he's making some sort of speech. You know what I mean?
Is that when he had COVID or?
I can't remember if this is
I'm just joking.
Can't remember if this a COVID remark or if this is a like people were saying, look, this guy seems to be behaving as though he is on cocaine, which would be a big deal because cocaine is still very illegal in the U.S. and was during his presidency. But this hasn't been proven. We know he definitely wasn't drinking because he's a teetotaler, sort of like later George W. Bush. But I have to ask you guys, what do you think the odds are that someone like a well-heeled businessman like Trump, who later became president, would he have done cocaine? Have you heard any speculation about this?
I have a story.
Oh boy.
I'm not going to name names,
Okay.
but I have a story about someone that I know from New York City who was going to a diet clinic like in the 70s or early 80s maybe. And you'd go to these diet clinics often in those days to get diet pills, which is essentially meth, or like stimulants. It makes it, reduces your appetite. Certainly something that's less okay now, but back then I think it was very, very common. And this person, who shall remain nameless, claims to have that Donald Trump went to the same diet clinic. And while there can be no confirmation as to whether he was going there to procure these said stimulants, it is entirely likely. But those stimulants would have also been legal and something that one could continue to take with a prescription over time. So I think it's more likely that it's that than cocaine, because Trump strikes me as such a teetotaler. I just don't buy him doing cocaine.
And those kind of accusations, regardless of your political leanings, can be unfair if you don't have any, if you're just sort of saying, this is my take on someone who might have a stuffy nose, just to be fair. But I love the point you're bringing up about prescriptions. These are, these guys have some of the best medical care in this country, which means that any possible conditions or any possible developments are obsessively watched for and predicted. And there's a lot of importance put on, their mental health and their ability to perform in a sustained, sharp manner. So it wouldn't be surprising at all to see that presidents have been maybe overprescribed drugs at certain times. These would count as legal substances because they are prescribed. And, if you're basically the president, if you want a prescription, they'll give it to you. But just because something has a legal status in the criminal justice system doesn't mean it's not addictive, and does not mean that substance abuse patterns are not going to be formed. Oh, and, there have been accusations all the time about this. I'm sure current President Biden, as we record this, is getting accused of being on some kind of pills, right? But if you want to know the real partier in the history of the U.S. presidency, thinking about one man who stands forever immortalized in this weird frat house environment. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. John liked to party. He also had a lot of health problems when he finally ran for president. His back was what we call FUBAR, to keep it a family show. He had something, experts are pretty convinced now, called Addison's disease, which is
I didn't know that.
it's an adrenal condition. So remember those insults of like low energy Jeb Bush or whatever? JFK was struggling. He had low energy, and he was also going up against Richard Nixon in those famous debates that taught us a lot about media, and that also probably cinched the election for him. He was young. He's kind of a whippersnapper. Say what you want about Richard Nixon, but that guy was sharp. He was whip smart, and he also had a lot of experience. He knew the ropes of politics.
Wasn't that I think what you're referring to maybe is the fact that this was the first big televised debate, and like Nixon looked kind of haggard and sweaty, and Kennedy just looked kind of, you know, like a smoke show, and it really the optics of it really kind of cinched it, like you said.
Yeah. People who listened to the debate on the radio tended to think Nixon carried the day, and people who saw the televised version were convinced that JFK was the better performer in the debates. But here's something people didn't know. I certainly didn't know this. I think a lot of people definitely did not know in 1960. But right before the 1960 presidential election, Kennedy is a senator, right? And he makes the acquaintance of a guy named Dr. Max Jacobson. Dr. Max Jacobson will later go on to get some cool street names. Miracle Max, he's called sometimes. People in the White House started calling him Dr. Feelgood. You can see where this is going, right?
Yeah. He was giving Kennedy shots of what he referred to as some kind of super vitamin, or like some kind of mystical tissue regeneration elixir, right?
Well, and according to Drunk History, placenta.
Yeah, this was a very that shout out to Drunk History, man. That's such a good show. And I feel like one day the three of us could do a Drunk History thing. It would be fun. We don't have to be drunk. I just want us to do silly reenactments of historical events. But yeah, Dr. Feelgood, Dr. Jacobson, was giving Kennedy shots of a formula that he had created. And this formula, by the way, was popular with many, many celebrities of the time. It was also he was a Jewish immigrant from Germany, and he was convinced that German forces were specifically using his formula on their troops, and maybe even Hitler himself was taking a jab. So these, like you said, these miracle tissue regenerator shots, they contained amphetamine, methamphetamine, allegedly animal hormones, like you said, Matt, human placenta, painkillers, steroids, and multivitamins. So to be absolutely fair, there were vitamins in there.
All at once? All of this stuff? Seems like this would kill a racehorse.
It's a formula, man. It's like Coca-Cola's secret formula, but in this case, it's got placenta.
Where do you get the placenta?
Painkillers?
Yeah.
It's like a speedball, man. That's wild.
Well, so as soon as Kennedy gets his first shot of this, he feels amazing. He's like,
yeah,
euphoric, and he's like, I am. You know, sometimes people talk in corporate America. Picture him walking off from the debate, and he's like, I crushed it. I crushed
then
it.
He literally smashed a desk with his fists.
Yes.
And it cracked in half, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, and to be fair, we do not know whether Kennedy knew what was in those shots.
Right.
Or like what was explained to him exactly.
And
this is like tales that we hear way after the fact.
Yes.
Different culture around medicine then, too. You just kind of trusted and took what the doctor gave you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why they say doctor's orders, or do as the doctor ordered. Yeah. I think that's a great point, Matt, because if he had been told, yeah, I'm going to shoot you up in the butt or in the throat with meth, he might have reacted differently. But he liked this. He felt it worked for him. And all in all, he got at least 34 of these shots on separate occasions. And folks in his inner circle were starting to get worried. Drunk History has a pretty great depiction of this. But from the reports we saw, when he was confronted by Robert Kennedy, his brother, and his brother said, dude, you're shooting up speed. then the president didn't really care what the answers were. He said, look, I don't care if it's horse piss. Is the quote you'll see. He said it works. Eventually, the White House physicians get wise to this, and they put a stop to it. They kind of have like an intervention. Like, dude, you are in charge of nuclear weapons.
All right, Miracle Max, you're no longer welcome in the Oval Office.
Right.
Well, Ben, I haven't confirmed the drunk history telling of it, but do we know whether the Carlisle Hotel thing was the reason for that intervention?
It's a little unclear on the order of operations, but
okay.
But because the way drunk history relates it, which again, it's a great show, but the way drunk history relates it is JFK gets cut off from Dr. Feelgood, and he's already like establishing a bad pattern because he's asking to get shots more and more frequently. And so apparently he is just dealing with physical pain that he cannot handle. And he contacts this Dr. Feelgood, and he's like, Dr. Feelgood, you gotta make me feel good one last time. And I don't know what, that's Kennedy is a beat poet, I guess. And right. And so they agree. And it's a wild story. They meet at the Carlisle Hotel in 1962, and there's one last shot, one last rocket to euphoria, but it's a much bigger dosage than Kennedy is used to, and he loses his mind.
Fun. Yeah, it sounds kind of humorous, I guess. Speed freakouts are nothing to be toyed with if you've seen like Requiem for a Dream and other like drug movies of the 90s and early 2000s. But yeah, he basically suffers a psychotic break. And what is he, like mooning people or something?
Mm-hmm. He takes all his clothes
stripped down.
Yeah.
Oh, full
cartwheels.
Yes.
Cartwheels down the hallways of a really nice hotel.
Right.
Is this just known after the fact, Ben, or is this something that surely this wasn't
after the
in
fact.
the news?
Yeah.
That would have been a field day.
So how weird and ridiculous is this? He's doing this in front of the Secret Service, in front of his bodyguards. He's like, woohoo, yeah.
Check out my dick.
I feel amazing. I call this move helicopter. You can picture it. And they're like, they're respectful. Their job is to protect this guy. By this point, they have probably seen him under the influence of this substance before. And so they're kind of like, from what we found and from what the way it gets reported unofficially is, they were kind of amused a little bit. They were like, this is crazy. This guy is the president. And he is
no doubt keeping a perfectly straight face the whole time.
I'm trying,
laughing behind their dark glasses.
I'm sure that was tough to keep a straight face. But then the fun and games are over because he breaks out of the hotel room and now he's crazy. Like he is having a psychotic break, running through, as Matt said, one of the most influential, important hotels and places of political horse trading in DC. And he's going nuts. This is going to be a disaster.
I just picture the Secret Service running after him in a line, like Benny Hill style, where they're all sped up, and then he and hits him over the head with a hammer and kind of runs.
And he's just screaming like Maryland. You know what I mean?
Oh no! Oh no!
I'm coming for you, Maryland.
Guys, think about the political disaster that would have been.
Yes.
Like if that happened now and it was Biden and he was at the W, just naked doing cartwheels, which would be very difficult for Biden at his age, but like. Everyone would have a cell phone. There would be footage of it. It would be on the news. Our enemies, our ideological enemies would just have a field day.
Yeah.
I mean, my God.
So
this is not a scenario that could ever occur again, I would argue.
Yeah, not in this way. This is pretty nuts. So if you were listening to this and
it turns out Kennedy had pretty nuts. That's what the Secret Service.
The bodyguard said that?
Yeah.
They were like, he puts the work in to manscaping. That speaks to his character. But didn't see the conversation going there, but it's a good point. So this is something you need to understand. If you grew up in the U.S., if you live in the U.S. this time, actually, I would say anybody alive today, we need to understand how very lucky everyone was that nothing went sideways during the psychotic break. How would a speed-geeked president respond to nuclear threats, for example, right? How would you be able to say, like, how would you be able to enact the amendments that say the president is currently unfit to serve and it's got to be the vice? You know, it's tough.
Well, one side effect of heavy methamphetamine use is like severe delusions of grandeur and like thinking you're kind of the center of the universe, you know? And I think we know one world leader that took a lot of amphetamines and acted out the worst possible version of that symptom. It was Hitler. You know, I mean, I don't doubt that his amphetamine use contributed to his like myopic, you know, completely bonkers worldview in some ways, or in the way he like expressed it.
Yeah, and this is a good point because we need to also highlight, as we said earlier, that other world leaders have I don't know what you want to call it. You want to call it partying or whatever. I didn't understand that for a long time. I was so square.
You party, bro?
Yeah, when, like
party?
I would be somewhere having someone ask me to party. I didn't know what they meant. I was like birthday parties, like.
Wait, I don't know what that means either.
I think it means to do cocaine.
Usually, I think it can mean different things, but yeah, it depends on how it's being asked and who's asking.
Okay,
It can also mean, you know, if a sex worker, you know, maybe asks you to party. At least in movies, that usually means, do you want to pay me for sex?
Well,
I thought it was like multiplayer games on PS4. Okay, never mind.
Well, I'm with you there.
Mario
Matt.
Party. It's Mario Party.
Oh, okay. It'll have the modifier. Yeah, no, for years, and this is embarrassing, but kind of endearing, I guess. I just thought people were asking me my opinion on partying, and
so do you party?
I like a good party. I am not. I don't have interest in whatever they were specifically referencing, but I generally was like, it was like asking someone. The way I thought of it, it was like if you ask someone, "Hey, you like music?" Who's gonna say no? Who's gonna be like, "Music's bullshit"? Matt.
Hot take. Ben, you're going to get quoted on that. Music's bullshit.
It'll pull out of context. No, the only person we have ever worked with who, and this is a beautiful, beautiful moment, our dear friend of the show, Scott Benjamin, who you probably heard on our recent Highway of Tears classic. We were on a road rally with him many years ago, and we were trying to find music that we could play in the car. And Scott was a very, very tolerant, live and let live dude. But he also eventually told us he just, quote, wasn't that into music of any kind. We spent like 20 minutes asking him genres. And he's like, oh, no. Most of the time, he's like, what is that?
But does he party?
That's the question. Anyway, JFK did. But to be clear, JFK was also seeking some kind of respite from these very painful medical conditions. And at certain points, he was definitely up to multiple medications per day, you know, including some like steroid stuff. And if you look back at people who've researched his medical records, they say when he was no longer a patient of Dr. Feelgood, his policy decisions seem to become a little more stable, but that's a correlation. Experts are not going to call that a causation just yet. We're not going to get to everything here, especially given how many of these things end up being legends or rumors or stuff that can't be proven. But we can say one takeaway here is presidents aren't the only politicians who have used illegal substances. None of them suffered the typical consequences of violating drug laws. No jail time, no fines, no probation. What's the other one? No ankle bracelets, no drug test. Well, they probably get drug tests pretty often, right? How does that work?
Oh, I kind of doubt it. Don't you?
Well, just so
when's the last time you had a drug test?
Well, I just mean they get.
You know what I mean?
You can't ask me that.
But what legally? But what I'm saying is, like, who's gonna?
What are you gonna do if you test
positive, Mr. President? Yeah,
we're gonna need you to do some counseling. Yeah, no, I'm the president.
Mr.
Get
President,
out of my face,
Mr. President. You can give us the Quaaludes now, or we're gonna have to search your room Okay.
I do what I want. Rips bong.
So,
Do you guys think, seriously,
yeah.
within our lifetimes, do you think it will be like marijuana, cannabis will be normalized to the point where a sitting president can be a just casual user of marijuana after hours, and everybody would be okay with it?
Maybe
If it was made legal, it's legal in the District of Columbia.
Yeah, if it's in our lifetimes, that's a long enough, hopefully, stretch of time that it could be possible, because think about it attaining the role of alcohol, or sort of the image of alcohol. Like it's very common for campaigning people, if they do imbibe, it's common for them to like have a beer with the local folks. We're here in Wisconsin,
Absolutely. You champagne
Yeah.
toasts when you win an election or whatever. But like, it's about attitude though, right? Like, I mean, if it's about like, playing to a base and constituents and all that. And even if it's legal, there's a lot of voters that if they thought the president was smoking wacky tobacco, they might not like it too much. So it's not about the law. It's about like, I mean, I know that's what you're saying, Matt, but I just think that's the thing that would make it be a long road to that, because of people's, remaining biases, which you're right, is turning. The tide of that is turning as well.
And the president would have to follow federal law first in that regard. So like they can't, the federal law is so contradictory, right, with the stance of state laws at this point. So it's a big bowl of spaghetti. I don't know if it would happen. Now I honestly, I don't know how I would react, because
That's what I was thinking about. Like, how would we personally react to the fact that the president just smokes weed? Not that it's a bad thing. It's just, as we stated at the top of this, the pressures that the president is under, and the like, the intense things that they have to handle.
I totally lost the launch codes. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
I mean,
it's so high.
I mean, it's not even as, or silly or dramatic as that. Just little things, like little decisions on diplomacy and some of the reactions. I don't
100%.
know.
Like I can see myself saying, you know what, I want to be fair. I love the guy's snack policy. I think that's done a lot. I like the soundtracks that are playing when the speeches start, but I wish they started on time, and maybe we're a little more focused. And less discussing the music that was playing as this person walked up. I don't know. I just always assumed that if you were working at that height, like, you have so much stuff you have to do. I would question like the time, right? What is your recovery time to be non-inebriated on your thing, which is, not letting the world descend into chaos or whatever.
It's a matter of professionalism too. I mean, we deal with plenty of folks that live and work in California, where weed's super legal, but if they showed up mega stoned to like an important business Zoom or something, that's not a good look. So, I mean, it's just a matter of like professionalism and just sort of like the weight of the office and all that. So I would say no. I would say that's maybe never going to happen, and I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it not happening, but I could see it happening. And again, these folks are all human. These are all human beings. We haven't touched on other world leaders, but you are going to find similar stories across the planet. There was one anecdote that was still hilarious. So former President Bill Clinton here in the U.S. had a really weird relationship with his Russian counterpart, Boris Yeltsin. And Yeltsin liked to party. And this is a true story. One time he was staying at the White House. He got like dead drunk, like fall down drunk. The sheets are not in the wind because the wind isn't sober enough to carry him drunk. And he stumbled out onto Pennsylvania Avenue, fighting off security, in his underwear in D.C., and he was screaming for a taxi because he wanted to go get pizza. He was unsuccessful.
I know that the whole thing with pizza is that they deliver it. Like,
it was a different time, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he was unfamiliar with that, but and that's that's another person living under enormous pressure. So we don't know specifics, but at this point, we turn the story over to you, fellow conspiracy realist. This is a question I have, Matt, for you, and for you, Noel, and for you listening at home. Ethically, should this kind of secrecy exist. This secrecy coupled with, let's be honest, the lack of consequences or lack of legal consequences. Is there a valid greater good argument here? Is it more important for the public not to know this is going on, or should these world leaders be held accountable? And if so, how? I don't know.
I leave it to listeners to let us know what they think. Honestly, I think it's an interesting question, and it's almost a whole nother conversation. And maybe we can, read back some people's responses on an upcoming listener mail.
Well, yeah, I'll give you my answer really fast. If we knew what went on behind the closed doors of the White House in any given presidency, I think we would, the country would explode in many ways, because we would completely lose faith in the office.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Matt.
That's a very good point. So what do you think, folks? We can't wait to hear from you. We try to be easy to find us online, Instagram, Facebook, all the hits, all the good ones, all that slow jazz of the World Wide Web. Go check out Here's Where It Gets Crazy on our Facebook page, and stay tuned.